Hey there everybody, Groovy here coming at you from the Grindhouse, and today we're going to be doing a quick little review of a movie that I just watched on HBO Max. Now, when I was hearing people talking about this movie after it had its quick little run in the theater, that they were all pretty much saying generally positive things about this film. But as I was watching reviews, it was just one of those movies where people were telling me you have to go in blind, right? And admittedly, a few months back when I actually saw the preview for this film when I was in the theaters for, I believe, The Black Phone, I actually did not think that this movie looked that interesting based on the premise of the trailer alone. It seemed generally run-of-the-mill, but it's just one of those movies where the trailer doesn't really let you know what it's really about. So today, we're going to be talking about the movie Barbarian. Now, this is a movie that's written and directed by Zach Cregger and stars Georgina Campbell as Tess and Bill Skarsgard as Keith. Now, Tess is actually on her way to an Airbnb, which she's made a reservation for. But when she gets there on a dark and stormy night, she finds that the key is already missing from the lockbox. And when she calls the person that she made the reservation with on the phone, she can't get an answer. But when she knocks on the door, she finds that Keith is already there, claiming that he's made the reservation for the Airbnb and that Tess can stay there if she likes, considering that the weather's getting pretty bad and it's getting pretty late. Now, this movie kind of takes place in like three different parts. When the movie first starts, we see Tess and we see Keith, and things are kind of uncomfortable because Keith is just a little bit strange. I mean, he's Pennywise without the makeup, but he doesn't seem overtly threatening. It's just kind of a series of strange circumstances, which generally should have most people running the other way, but Tess decides to maybe use her judgment accordingly, or not use her judgment accordingly, depending on how you want to look at things, and actually spend the night with Keith because he seems relatively harmless, right? He even offers to sleep on the couch while she uses the bedroom. And then there are some certain situations that kind of start to arise, like she's getting changed in the bathroom, I believe, and then, you know, he offers her some wine and makes sure to wait until she's out of the bathroom so she can see him opening the bottle of wine, probably because he didn't want to seem like he was making any sort of implication, but also on the other hand, maybe because he didn't want her to think he was trying to roofie her. I don't quite know. I've never shared bottles of wine with strangers in Airbnb. I don't really know what the modus operandi is in that sort of situation. But they share a little bit of a wine and they actually have a nice discussion, and she kind of starts to think that, yo, Keith actually isn't that bad of a guy. So while the movie starts to set you up to think that maybe there might be something strange with Keith because he is having some strange sort of night terrors as he's sleeping on the couch, and while Tess is sleeping, she does kind of hear things creaking around in the house, and at one point somebody opens up the door to her bedroom. But she knows that Keith is definitely sound asleep, having some sort of weird-ass fucking nightmare, as I already said, on the couch. Which kind of sets up this sort of strange mystery. Is this a ghost story? At first I thought that maybe Keith was like a ghost, or maybe he was possessed by something in the house. Maybe Keith was in on this, but wasn't really totally in on it. Maybe he knew a little bit more than he was letting on, but definitely he wasn't behind whatever weirdness hadn't even really taken place in the house yet. But then the next morning, Tess actually goes out for her job interview, or I forget exactly what it was, because it doesn't really matter. And then when she comes back to the house, she accidentally gets locked in the basement of the house and notices that downstairs there's a video camera set up with a really crusty ass looking mattress down there as well. And not only that, while she's looking for a way out of the basement, she finds that there's a sort of a trap door behind one of the shelves which leads even deeper down into the basement. And now at this point, Keith actually comes back to the house because he'd also been out when Tess got back, and she tells him what's going on, and she goes upstairs while Keith goes down to investigate. But instead of calling the police, Keith decides to just go deeper down into the basement of this house that he doesn't even live in. And after a while, Tess gets a little bit worried because Keith hasn't come back up. So she goes into the basement looking for Keith. And as she presses deeper and deeper into the basement, she runs into an injured Keith, who says that something down there bit him because he didn't have enough common sense to haul ass out of that basement as soon as he saw the sex dungeon with the video camera. Which also makes me kind of question, why the hell didn't they check to see like what was on the video camera? You've got a video camera with a tripod and a minimalistic lighting setup pointed at a bloodstained mattress in the basement of a house where things seem a little bit off. Usually that's about time for me to check out. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have even come back the next day, but that's me. But before we know it, and before they can get their asses out of the basement, this monstrous, disheveled woman comes out of the dark and takes Keith by the head and literally just bashes the fuck out of his face into the brick wall down there in this makeshift tunnel that somebody has been building possibly for years. And that's when the movie shifts and is done with its first part. And as I said, this movie takes place in 3 parts, and each are kind of a little bit different, but they all really are kind of connected. But it is a little bit jarring when we go from the story with Tess and Keith, and then we switch over to the story with AJ Justin Long. And AJ is an actor who's living out in LA and is getting ready to start shooting a new television series or something like that. But it turns out that AJ's hopes for stardom are dashed because he's been accused of sexual misconduct by one of the people that he worked with on the show, because his ass is getting Me Too'd. But this movie doesn't really dwell too much on that, because that's just kind of the catalyst to get him to leave that area and then come back to check out some of the properties that he has in Michigan, which is where the Airbnb house is, that he's been using for generating some income passively, I guess, with some of the money that he's made in his career or something like that. It really isn't that important. But we start to see some of the layers of AJ's personality, because he immediately kind of gets aggressive and defensive towards this woman, which is kind of making these accusations towards him. And he also does kind of try to call her up for some form of drunken apology, and it really doesn't paint him in a positive light. Neither does it paint him in a positive light when he gets to the house and realizes people have been using it for an Airbnb. And then he goes down into the basement and he's looking around, and again is the third person to see the camera pointed at the bloodstained mattress and not think, yo, this is kind of fucked up. Maybe I should call the police. Or I don't know, maybe AJ had a producer's credit for the films that they were making with the bloody mattress down in the sex dungeon. But either way, we do get another bit of a hint towards AJ's personality in this movie, because instead of being freaked out again, he takes out the tape measure and realizes, yo, I've got way more square footage here than I realized. I should probably up the rent here on this Airbnb. And then he also sees the staircase leading down into the dark depths of nothingness. And he also decides, yo, I'm gonna go down there and I'm gonna see what the hell is going on. Maybe just take a quick look around, see what's going on. Maybe take the tape measure down there and try to calculate how much additional square footage I just realized so I can up this property value for resale. But it's not long before he runs down into Tess, who tries to quiet his ass down because she doesn't want him to yell or get too loud and startle this mother-baby creature thing that's scuttling around down in these dark-ass tunnels in the basement. And this thing is really fucking hideous. It's like a female take a little bit on the freak from the movie Castle Freak. And while I probably can't find any stills of the mother creature to really show you guys, if I have to paint a mental picture for it, I would definitely say picture in your head a kind of female take on the Castle Freak, and that's generally a good idea of what's running around in the tunnels below this house. Now again, because these are movie characters and they are absolutely fucking stupid, they decide not to bolt the hell out of there, but they kind of linger around just long enough to get attacked and taken hostage by the creature that's been living in the basement. And we get this kind of disgusting sort of scene where they're kind of trapped in this little pit underneath like a cage made out of like an old mattress or something like that, and keeping them down there. And she's actually feeding them from this nasty ass bottle because this woman is severely emaciated and inbred and very dangerous looking. She's got that kind of Lisa Trevor kind of vibe going on, if you know what I mean. But she kind of thinks that these people that are coming down into the basement are like her surrogate babies, and she's trying to both force feed them and keep them from leaving so she can keep them safe, which is kind of an interesting dynamic for this monster creature in this film. And I thought it actually worked really well because you really only see the creature at first in kind of quick flashes down in these dark claustrophobic tunnels, and I thought it was extremely effective. And that's when we kind of shift into the third part of the film, which is sort of a flashback at first, which shows us Frank, played by Richard Brake, as just this kind of creepy guy that was living in that house about 40 years ago. It seems like it was some point in the 80s, if I remember correctly, and this movie's set in the modern time, so it was probably 30, 40 years ago or so. And back when that neighborhood, which is a slum now, was actually a decent place to live. But everybody seems to be moving out because apparently there's some weird things going on in the neighborhood. And we find out that Frank has been taking women hostage and keeping them prisoner down in this basement and assaulting them sexually and impregnating them. And over the years has been impregnating the children that he's been having with the women that he has been kidnapping. So yeah, Richard Brake is playing another fucked up character in a movie. Go figure. But Tess uses AJ getting captured by the mother as a distraction to get the hell out of the basement and run outside and try to escape the clutches of the house and get into her car and get the hell out of there. But instead of actually gunning it out of the frickin' neighborhood when she gets to her car, she decides that she sees the mother creature come out of the house, so she wants to run it down and actually take care of it once and for all. But of course, like most good horror movies, all she ends up doing is injuring the mother creature and just slowing it down long enough for her to start a conversation with this friendly homeless man played by James Butler. I think his name is Andre. I don't know if that's even said. I had to look it up on IMDb. Not sure if they actually said it in the film. And he kind of plays her sort of Riverman character. If you'd ever seen Return of the Living Dead Part 3, he's kind of this scary seeming homeless man who's actually trying to scare her off so that she didn't actually stay in the house earlier in the film. But she doesn't know that because he's coming at her smelling like piss, looking like a hobo, and rambling on to himself, right? But they decide that he's gonna go take her to someplace safe because, of course, when she looks back, don't you know it, the mother creature who had been pinned between the wall of the house and the hood of the car is no longer anywhere to be seen. But they try to hoof it off to safe lodgings with the mother creature hot on their trails. But they don't get too far because as soon as they think that they're safe and they have a minute to breathe, the mother definitely catches up with her and kills the shit out of Andre, and she just fucking obliterates his ass, man. I think she rips his arm off and fucking crushes his head. It was pretty damn brutal. But then Tess tries to escape from the creature and then heads up this water tower along with AJ, who has caught up with her as well after she had ran out of the house. And AJ's brought a gun, which he actually used to kill the man who was downstairs in the basement because Frank was still living down in the basement. And while Tess was running around trying to play Grand Theft Auto and run down the mother baby creature, Frank and AJ had a little bit of a run-in, and I thought for a second that Frank was actually going to try to shoot AJ, but once Frank realized the jig was up because Frank is all old and bedridden now, AJ discovers that he's got multiple tapes of women that he's assaulted over the years, and Frank just decided to just off himself and take the easy way out instead of actually facing justice for his crimes. But eventually AJ does actually catch up with the main plot line of the film, and towards the climax, the AJ character and the Tess character are together being chased up a water tower by the mother creature. At which point we definitely see AJ's true colors. We actually see AJ push Tess off of the roof of the water tower because he realizes that the mother creature is looking at them as like misbehaving children, and he taking into account that maybe if he pushes her off, that the mother creature will go after Tess to try to save her, and that he'll save his own skin in the process, because it turns out AJ really is kind of a scumbag. But of course, the mother creature actually ends up breaking their fall, and while she is severely injured, she's only down for a couple of seconds, long enough for AJ to get down there and not actually confirm the kill by double tapping that thing in the fucking head when he has a chance. And before he knows it, she's back on her feet. And she gives his ass the hard goodbye. I'm talking Fulci shit, man. Just jamming those fucking thumbs right into his fucking eyeballs while he's fucking screaming his head off, man. It's another Jeepers Creepers moment for this guy, I'm telling you. But yeah, that's pretty much the climax of the film. I think frickin' Tess ends up having to kill the mother baby creature monster thing with the gun. I think she shoots her a couple of times, but I kind of digress because at that point you kind of get the gist of where the movie's going. Tess is our final girl, and we got the sort of interesting ride in the day of someone that's checked in at a low quality Airbnb. But yeah, all in all, I did really enjoy this film. I thought it was great. I wasn't exactly sure where the movie was going, and it definitely takes a couple of veers here and there with the shift over to the B plot line, telling us what's going on with AJ, who isn't mentioned at any point at all before that. He just kind of pops up about a third of the way into the movie, and we just kind of get left on a strong cliffhanger with whatever's going on with Tess. And then we see his side of the story, which isn't even his side of the story. It's almost like a completely different story, like we're just shifting over to a new segment in an anthology. And then it eventually coalesces when we see that he's actually the owner of this house, which people are apparently renting out for an Airbnb, and I'm not sure if he's aware of this or if he's the one who is renting it out. It doesn't really make sense. They don't really clarify that in the film because this movie gives us answers about a couple of things, but just leaves the other stuff up in the air. So there are some parts that seem a little bit disjointed, like I said, especially with the second part of this film. But all in all, I did really enjoy it. I thought that he definitely got his comeuppance, and you definitely see that he's definitely not the kind of person that he likes to present himself as. And as we start to see these little trickles of maybe who he might really be underneath, it starts to seem more and more apparent that that is his true face. But I did enjoy this movie overall. I do like that it kind of sets up these expectations with Tess and Keith, and you think that it's going to be this kind of tense, kind of simmering, kind of psychological thriller kind of between these two. Maybe he's going to keep her hostage. Maybe she's going to keep him hostage. Who knows? It's a very progressive world out there these days. But then it takes that hard turn into the second act after the reveal in the basement, and then shifts gears, and then we see something totally different until that eventually starts to come back together. And then we get the flashback, which gives us a little bit of history as to what's going on in the house. And then we kind of have a little bit of a rushed kind of final act of the film. And there are some points where I'm just sitting there scratching my head as to why the hell she didn't leave as soon as she saw the bloody mattress. Why didn't anybody seem bothered by the bloody mattress in the basement with the camera pointing at it? That's kind of fucking weird, right? She didn't seem to care. Keith didn't seem to care. AJ didn't seem to care. All of these people had the perfect opportunity to get the hell out of there when they saw that, and then figure out, you know, maybe I'll go hit up a Motel 6 or a Red Roof over by the airport. That's one of the things that I disliked about this movie, that it has a little bit too much of that horror movie logic, especially when things start to really kind of reveal themselves, you know what I mean? But there is enough negative space in the film as well to kind of leave some things up to the imagination, like how many other things might actually be down in that basement. You know, exactly how long had Frank been doing this? I mean, they kind of set it up. They might have given a specific date and to that 80s flashback, but I'm not quite sure without going back and watching the movie again, which I probably will do. But there was some fun gore in it. There were a couple of fun scenes in it as well. There was this one really good scene where the mother monster creature is trying to feed Justin Long's character with this kind of disgusting ass bottle, and then she's looking at him, and then she taps him on the nose and goes boop. But yeah, I did really enjoy this movie. Like I said, might not be your cup of tea, but definitely worth a watch. At the very least, I would say it was far more enjoyable than that Castle Freak remake, reboot, whatever the hell you want to call it, that they released last year or whenever it happened to come out. But did you guys watch Barbarian? Let me know in the comments section. Did you guys like this video? Did you guys like this movie? Do you think I'm on point with my reactions to this film? It's completely unscripted and I'm just coming at you off the top of my head. So if there are any factual errors, I apologize in advance. But until next time, we're gonna go watch some weird ass movies. We will be back and we will talk to you again very, very soon. Stay safe, stay classy, people, but no matter what you do, if you book an Airbnb and you go down to the basement at any fucking point and there's a video camera with bad lighting pointing at a blood-stained mattress in a corner of the basement, just get the fuck out of there, dude. Or at least try to see if you can get a discount on the Airbnb, people. But aside from that, stay classy. We'll catch you next time, people. Bye-bye.